Inflammation affects our health in many ways, from digestive problems to painful joints. Here were some tips on foods to eat and others to avoid to reduce inflammation. Please welcome back nutritionist Carrie Dennett. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
So let's talk again. You did this before for us, but help us to understand what inflammation is and why that's important.
Yes. I mean, inflammation, it kind of sounds scary, but it's actually sometimes a good thing. Like if you think about if you sprain your ankle and it swells up, that's actually good. Or you cut your finger and it's kind of puffy, that's good. That's
because
your
it's
body.
Part of healing.
Yeah, that's part of the healing process. And once things are on their way to recovery, the inflammation goes away. What we don't want is kind of the low-level chronic systemic inflammation. That's not good. That means your body's immune system is kind of up in arms for no really good reason, and that's not good for our health.
So what is it that's inflamed exactly? What are we talking about? Organs?
Yeah, you know, a lot of the body's tissues, I mean, one of the reasons inflammation, chronic inflammation has been implicated as a big cause, you know, cause factor in heart disease, diabetes, some forms of cancer, and one of the reasons is like the lining of our blood vessels can get inflamed, and that can contribute to heart disease. So yeah, it's just not good. Digestive issues, possibly brain issues, the whole body can be affected.
So we'll talk about some lifestyle choices in a minute, but let's talk about food as a way to protect your health. Let's talk about foods we should be eating more of.
Yeah, I mean, basically one of the biggest categories of foods we should be eating more of is plants. Whole plant foods are minimally processed, and that includes vegetables, whole grains, lentils and beans.
Those lentils look good, actually.
And I think...
Ooh, and almonds, excuse me.
That's right. Yeah, go ahead. Straight from California,
Yum.
So, you know, I think in generally, we kind of hear eat the rainbow, and that's a good guideline, but I like to always tell people that some of the white vegetables are really good. Like we've got cauliflower over there, which is super good for us, you know, and garlic. And those actually are members of two of the biggest inflammation-fighting vegetable families. The broccoli family, we sometimes call them the cruciferous family. So you've got your broccoli, you've got your kale, you've got your cauliflower, there's a nice red cabbage there, Brussels sprouts. You know, those all are really rich in phytonutrients, some of which specifically fight inflammation.
Perfect. And so learning to cook those things in ways that we like. I just figured out how to make cauliflowers sort of like mashed potatoes, the faux mashed potatoes.
Roasting them is my favorite way. Roasting just brings out the natural sweetness. And then the whole onion and garlic family, you know, including leeks and green onions, those are all, you know, we don't think of those as vegetables, but they really are. They're not just seasonings.
And leeks are actually delicious, and we don't think of those very often. Okay, foods we need to eat less of.
We would need to eat less of definitely unhealthy fats, and that's primarily the saturated fats. So, you know, I usually tell people who enjoy beef, which beef can be, you know, a great part of a diet. We need protein, but lean cuts of beef, cut off visible fat. Fried foods are a double hit because usually a lot of saturated fat in the process of frying brings up some kind of unhealthy compounds. Instead, you know, go for things like the nuts, the fatty fish. I've got a nice can of sardines and can of salmon there. Those are, you know, those are the better fats. And then, of course, sugar and refined white flour. I mean, not that we can't include some of that. You know, those kinds of foods bring pleasure, you know, cake, baked goods. But
they certainly do.
But keeping it to a minimum and going more for, you know, the whole intact grains or whole wheat flour.
Okay, so just keep those to a minimum.
Kind of lower,
All right. Foods to moderate, things that are okay, but we don't want to eat a ton of.
Well, two of a lot of people's favorite substances, caffeine, as in coffee, and alcohol.
Oh my goodness.
In moderation, you know, caffeine and alcohol are fine, and in fact, you know, moderate intake of red wine in particular is part of a traditional Mediterranean diet.
It is a health food, let's face it. But let's talk about what moderation is then, because I hear that a lot. What does that mean in terms of caffeine and alcohol intake?
Well, for alcohol, it means 1 drink a day for women, 2 for men, which I often think is patently unfair, but there you have it. And it doesn't mean saving them all up for Sunday. So
yes, okay.
Yeah, just keeping it moderate. Caffeine, you know, I can't remember the exact milligrams, but you know, usually if you're
like a cup of coffee, how many cups can you have and feel okay about it?
Depending on people's cup, if it's really a smaller cup, maybe 2 to 3. You know, some people have the jumbo cups.
So
I mean,
like we're talking about an 8-ounce cup, 2 or 3, and leave it alone. Now, if we have decaf, is that okay, or is there still enough of whatever this is that's in there that that's bad for us that we should avoid?
Yeah, that would be better. It's mostly the caffeine. Actually, coffee does have some beneficial phytonutrients in it. You know, that's why you see a lot of headlines like, it's good for you, it's not good for you. I think in moderation, it definitely is.
Let's talk about dark chocolate. What is your policy on dark chocolate?
My policy on dark chocolate is that it's delicious, and I think certainly can be part of a healthy diet, but it kind of has a health halo that might be overinflated. There's actually a very good long-term study going on right now, really trying to get to the bottom of
I'm opposed to that. I like where we are now. Where we think it's good. But like if you just have an ounce, a square of dark chocolate a day, you're okay with that?
Yeah, and you know what? If it brings some pleasure to life, I mean, food is supposed to bring us some pleasure. So
let's talk about spices.
Oh yes, spices. So, you know, spices are plant foods, and a lot of the phytonutrients are really concentrated because they're dried. A lot of spices can have some anti-inflammatory benefit, but I think the big three are cinnamon, get mine from Costco because I use a lot of it, turmeric, which you can also get in root form, and then ginger, which in this case I brought in root form, but actually the ground ginger is good too. It's like the fresh ginger is kind of higher in some of the compounds. The ground ginger is higher in others.
You're
so
great
either
with the
way,
ground.
yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about food as, you know, not necessarily medicine, but just the things that can help us keep healthy. What are some of your other lifestyle choice issues that you'd like us to think about?
Yeah, getting regular, you know, moderate exercise. I mean, I say moderate because that's what a lot of people prefer. It doesn't have to be high intensity. It's just good for the body. It helps kind of reduce inflammation. Getting enough sleep, which is something that a lot of people don't do.
I'm so excited about that recommendation these days.
Yeah, you know, when we don't get enough sleep, it kind of raises levels of stress hormones, and that can contribute to inflammation. And so along that line, also figuring out ways to handle stress in your life, you know, whether it's saying no to some things that you feel pressured to say yes to, or just coming up with healthy ways when you are feeling stressed, because we all do. We can't avoid it.
There's some great guided meditation apps. I love Headspace and Calm. Those are my two suggestions.
Insight Timer is another good one.
That's a great suggestion. And let me just go back to sleep for a moment. When we say adequate sleep, what is that?
You know, it depends. They say the average adult needs 7 to 9 hours. You know, they often say that your amount of sleep is the amount of sleep that you get when you're not waking to alarm on vacation, maybe like a week or so in. You know, maybe you've caught up. And, you know, and it needs to be quality sleep too. I mean, somebody can be in bed for 8 hours, but if they're constantly waking up and tossing and turning, then there may be some sleep issues.
And what would you say for kids? Because I know that's a big issue, teenagers, small kids.
I'm not totally up on the recommendations. They do change with age. Like teenagers, I know, get more sleep, and you see a lot of stuff. And they need it. Yeah, and their circadian rhythms are actually different than adults, so it's ironic that school starts so early. They're actually meant to go to bed later and sleep in later.
Yes,
so
that's why they look the way they look at the bus stop in the morning, like, you know, life has no meaning at all at that hour of the day. Thank you so very much. When we come back, 6 specific tips to get out of debt, your financial wellness, when New Day continues. Thank you very much.